The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the quiet efficiency of 1,000 civilizations conducting business. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the designated human section, her posture straight, hands folded neatly in her lap. She had maintained this diplomatic facade for 3 hours, as the various species debated Resource Allocation Amendment 847B. The Zephyrians clicked their approval with crystalline appendages. The Molluscan collective pulsed their agreement in synchronized bioluminescence. Even the notoriously stubborn granite lords had rumbled their consent through subsonic vibrations that rattled the chamber's foundations. Only one species remained silent during the voting: humanity. The floor recognizes the human delegation, announced Council Speaker Vexhai, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Ambassador Chen, your people's response to the amendment? Sarah stood gracefully, smoothing her navy blue diplomatic uniform. Around her, 1,000 alien gazes focused with the intensity of solar collectors. She had practiced this moment, rehearsed the careful words that would maintain Earth's precarious position in galactic politics. Honored Speaker, esteemed council members, Sarah began, her voice carrying the practiced cadence of diplomatic neutrality. Humanity appreciates the Council's continued efforts to ensure equitable resource distribution across member worlds. A ripple of approval passed through the chamber. The humans were always so refreshingly polite compared to species like the war clans of Arcturus, who typically responded to proposals by roaring challenges and beating their chests. However, Sarah continued, we must respectfully decline participation in Amendment 847B. The chamber's ambient hum shifted slightly. Several species exchanged glances, or their equivalent sensory acknowledgments. Council Speaker Vexhai's translator crackled. Ambassador, perhaps you misunderstood the amendment's requirements. This is not a voluntary participation measure. All member species are required to contribute 70% of their agricultural output to the central distribution network. Sarah's smile never wavered. No, honored Speaker, I understood perfectly. Then you understand that refusal constitutes a violation of Council authority and may result in sanctions. I do. The Molluscan collective pulsed red, their color of confusion. The granite lord's rumbling grew deeper, more threatening. Even the ethereal void dancers seemed to coalesce more solidly, as if the very concept of defiance required physical form to comprehend. High Counselor Thexmore of the hegemony leaned forward, his mantis-like form clicking with agitation. Human, your species has been remarkably accommodating since joining our council 15 cycles ago. Surely you see reason in this equitable distribution? Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Oh, absolutely. The amendment is quite reasonable from a certain perspective. Her tone remained pleasant, conversational even. 70% of our agricultural output would feed approximately 47 billion beings across the galaxy for roughly 6 months. Exactly. Vexhai's relief was audible through her translator. You do understand. I understand the mathematics, Sarah agreed. What I also understand is that Earth currently feeds 12.7 billion humans, plus provides agricultural exports to 6 colony worlds, plus maintains strategic reserves for our military operations across 47 star systems. The chamber grew quieter. Sarah's smile brightened. Now here's where it gets interesting, she continued, clasping her hands behind her back. See, when you take 70% of our agricultural output, you're not just taking food. You're taking the foundation of human civilization. You're essentially asking us to starve so that other species can eat. High Counselor Thexmore's clicking intensified. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, human. This is basic council philosophy. Sarah nodded again, still smiling. Oh, I absolutely agree with that philosophy. In fact, humans have a saying that's quite similar. Her voice remained perfectly level, perfectly diplomatic. The needs of the many do indeed outweigh the needs of the few. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Which is why humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber erupted. Not in sound. Most species present communicated through means other than vocalization, but in a cascade of colors, vibrations, chemical releases, and electromagnetic pulses that set every translator in the room screaming warnings. Speaker Vexhai's voice cut through the chaos. You cannot simply withdraw. There are protocols, procedures. Your species signed the Galactic Compact. Sarah's smile never wavered, but something fundamental shifted in her posture. The diplomatic mask didn't slip, it simply became irrelevant. Article 47 of the Galactic Compact, she recited from memory. Any member species may withdraw from Council authority upon formal declaration, provided said species assumes full responsibility for its own defense and territorial integrity. Human. High Counselor Thexmore's clicking had taken on an almost frantic quality. You don't understand the implications. Without Council protection, your species will be vulnerable to the devourers, the entropy cults. The needs of the many, Sarah interrupted gently, outweigh the needs of the few. The chamber fell silent. You see, Sarah continued, her voice carrying a new quality, not threatening exactly, but carrying the unmistakable weight of absolute certainty. Humanity has been very polite these past 15 cycles. We've said please and thank you. We've respected your customs, learned your languages, adapted to your social structures. We've been model citizens. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembled species. But politeness honored council members should never be mistaken for weakness. Sarah reached into her uniform pocket and withdrew a small datapad. This contains our formal withdrawal documents, along with detailed intelligence reports on every military installation, defensive network, and strategic asset belonging to every council member species. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Intelligence we gathered, Sarah continued pleasantly, during our 15 cycles of polite cooperation. Because you see, while you were debating resource allocation and territorial disputes, humanity was doing what humans do best. Her smile widened slightly. We were learning. High Counselor Thexmore's voice was barely a whisper through his translator. You're declaring war on the entire council. Sarah looked genuinely surprised. War? Oh goodness, no. We're far too polite for that. She tucked the datapad away. We're simply withdrawing our participation in a system that no longer serves our interests. She gathered her materials with practiced efficiency. Of course, this does mean that the various defensive pacts, mutual aid agreements, and resource-sharing arrangements between humanity and individual council species are now subject to renegotiation. The implications hit the chamber like a collapsing star. Humanity had spent 15 years becoming indispensable. Human agricultural techniques had increased food production on 40 worlds. Human medical advances had eradicated diseases that had plagued species for millennia. Human engineering had improved faster than light travel by 30% across the galaxy. And human military advisors had been instrumental in ending 3 major conflicts in the past decade alone. Sarah paused at the chamber's exit, turning back one final time. Her diplomatic smile was still perfectly in place, but her eyes held something that made several species take an involuntary step backward. The Terran Federation will be establishing our own governing body, she announced. Membership is open to any species that believes in genuine cooperation rather than thinly veiled exploitation. She inclined her head politely. We'll send you an invitation. As the chamber doors closed behind her, Sarah's last words echoed through the hall. Have a lovely day. The Galactic Council would spend the next 6 months learning the difference between human politeness and human restraint. They would discover that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology, their adaptability, or even their military prowess. It was their ability to remain perfectly civil, while systematically dismantling everything you thought you knew about power. The human polite mode hadn't switched off, the Council realized too late. It had simply revealed what it was actually protecting them from.